But you're going to have a big surprise when I finish this first demonstration. Let me go to full screen with these photos, and then we'll continue. Okay, what you're looking at, oh, one of the things I do is I teach lunar navigation. I teach people how to find where they are on the moon. Unfortunately, most people only get to see the face of the man in the moon, as it's called. Well, I start out with this area here. It's the eye of the man on the moon. And his other eye is over here. This eye is easily recognizable because it is a perfectly circular mare. It's not a crater, it's a mare, a sea. And this is one of the few seas on the moon that is completely sealed, you might say. There are no bays. That's what they're called. They're bays when they go in or outlets. So this is the Mare Crisium. And this is a very interesting area. When you look at the moon from Earth, depending on your instrument, if it doesn't reverse it, this is on the right side. But sometimes when people look through binoculars, the optics of the binoculars will either reverse the image right to left or up to down. This area here is where Apollo landed. Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility. They landed down here, approximately where it's a little out here where it says space, a little bit to the right of that. And this area here is called the Mare Serenitatis. Someone has their speakers on and I can hear a slight echo.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me, but I'm just letting you know.
Yes, please mute. Okay.
I want to point out to you here in the Sea of Serenity, this unusual ray. They usually call these things rays, long streaks that generally appear to emanate from the crater and out. But this ray is rather unusual because it's right straight across, as we would say, from northwest to southeast. This ray here is very important, and I'm going to give you some surprises later on. Then over here we have the limb of the moon, and over here you can just barely see something. Here's the surface of the moon, and you see this little glow. It's above the surface of the moon. If it's not on the surface of the moon, it's the tip of something that's very, very, very high. As you can see that here is the night, or the sky of space, black space. Here you have the limb of the moon delineated by the sunlight. You have this break here, and I'm going to show you something interesting later on. This attracted me in other photographs, curiosity. What be reflecting light so far out, so high above the moon, when that section of the moon is experiencing night? We have someone else.
Hold on.
Need to put the
whoever is not muted,
you're gonna have to
please mute it because we're picking up the feedback.
Okay. So there, I'm setting up the mysteries that we're going to resolve here. Let's go on and just take a little tour of the moon. Okay, here's the Mare Crisium, and here we have the northern regions, an area here called the Mare Frigorum, which means it's pretty cold up there. And Frigorum is like frigid. And we come across here, and we have the Oceanus Procellarum, mountain range up there called the Apennine Mountains, a region of the moon that's rarely spoken of. And here we're starting to see sort of color photographs. I say sort of because it's not really full color. Here we have the Sea of Serenity, and here you have that ray, as I called it before. You're going to see later on that it's not a ray, but actually a very, very high ridge that runs the span, the entire length from, in this case, north to south of the Sea of Serenity. Now on this left side here, this large open area is called the Ocean of Storms, or the Oceanus Procellarum. I like the Latin names. And it's very easy to learn which is which by looking at landmarks. And the most significant landmark is this one. This was the first landmark that I discovered for myself. I didn't know the moon very well, but around the late 1980s, I bought a very old book from the 1930s. It was one book of an encyclopedia, and then it had a section on astronomy. And when I looked at the photograph that they had for astronomy, I saw it perfect.
Did we lose Robert?
Yes.
Perfectly circular crater, but over here in this region, and specifically this thing here, I looked at it from the top of the moon, that section where the light object was Mare Marginis. And these are the names named after the great rocket scientist. Hubble discovered that the universe was expanded. And Joliot, named after famous astronomers and explorers. Again, we are now traveling on they used to call the dark side of the moon. We're traveling over several major craters and mares of that area. Again, seeing angles of the moon that were taken by who shot this picture. And I don't know, it looks like somebody's trying to call us. All right. Mare Spumans, Mare Smythe, and Mare Marginis. Okay, you see this area here? This is what you're looking at. This is the outer edge, the limb of the moon as we see it from Earth. We see these flattened out, barely visible from our perspective. And these are the names: the Mare Undarum, Mare Spumans, Sea of Foam, Mare Smithy, named after Mr. Smith. And I showed you before the Mare Marginis, around which you have the Goddard crater, Joliot, and Hubble. Now we're starting to look at the really, really unique aspects. This is, as you can see, the light is right here and the darkness is here. So we're entering the far side of the moon. And here we are on the far side of the moon, looking at the Mare Smythe and the Mare Marginis. And we start to see how different the far side of the moon is from the near side of the moon. The near side has very large and extensive mare. And it is said that when you look at the far side of the moon in whole and the near side of the moon in whole, if you presented the photographs to someone who did not know what they were looking at, they might swear that they were looking at two different planets. They are so starkly different in the topography. The far side of the moon has almost no large mares, but it does have the biggest crater on the moon, and that is this one. This is called the Mare Orientale, or the Oriental Sea, or the Sea of the East. And as you they said the host muted me, so I have taken the liberty of unmuting myself. Can you still hear me, Joe?
Yes, I can. You're loud and clear. Matter of fact, I still have that echo. Robert, I think you're using two computers, aren't you?
No, I'm not in the same room.
Okay, well, I'm picking up feedback and it looks like everybody else is muted. So,
All right, let me bring down the volume. So as I was saying, this is the biggest crater on the moon. Does that help? I've just lowered the volume.
yes, that's much better.
Okay. So the moon has been protecting the Earth since time immemorial. Were it not for the moon, the asteroid that did this devastating strike. So the moon is a guardian to the Earth. Now, again, you see that the moon in this photograph looks gray and black and blacker. And that is an illusion. The black within the black is actually depth. For many years, NASA told people that this thing was only 4 kilometers deep. And in fact, it is an entrance to the interior of the moon. It also emanates vapors. There is weather on the moon, but not weather as we understand it. That's it. That's the same thing again, long shot. This is crater Grimaldi. Can barely be seen from the Earth. This is the ocean of storms that I was describing. This is the side of the Earth over here that we can see, and this is all that we cannot see. So I concentrated. Now, here, let me show you a very interesting thing. One of the things that NASA has done for years is it changes the perspective of the topography of the moon, and it looks like these mountain ranges, cordilleras, there are inner ring and outer ring of mountains around the Mare Orientale, and they all look about the same height. But in fact, these are prodigious peaks, and they are not shaped like mountains on the earth. They're shaped more like your fingers. And if you look at your hands from your fingertips, you'll get an idea of the perspective. You're looking down and it looks flat. But if you look at your hand from the side, you can see that your fingers are very long. Well, the next photograph is a very rare photograph. It was taken by Clementine, the U.S. Navy satellite that circled the moon for several years. And we're looking at the same thing now, the Mare Orientale. Now you can see the depths, and you can see the mountain range actually rises. My estimate is that this is at least 100 miles. And you see this, the finger of fate, as I call it, right here. That's one of the mountains that you were looking onto over here, and it looks flat. So the topography of the real moon is not as it has been shown to us. Now we're having a wide scale view of the northern regions. Excuse me. Oh, let's try it this way. Yeah. Uh, and there are a lot of ways of looking at the moon. And we can tell where we are now because here's the Mare Crisium. I do enhancements and contrast work on photographs. I'll take a photograph that's bleached out, darken it a bit to bring this up. I'll take a photograph that's very dark. And I'll change the gamma, move the resolution. And I think the photograph is improving with each iteration of enhancement that I conduct on the photograph. There you have it brightly. Here you have it darkened to contrast. And in doing this work, I've learned to see the black within the black. Now, this is an interesting photograph. It was taken by Lunar Orbiter 4. And here we start to see very unusual things on the sides here. There are regions where towers exist on the moon. And occasionally, I have found one or two photos that, now this is a Russian photograph. Now let's take a look at it. I really do admire what the Russians did. Here you start to get an idea of the profundity of the Mare Orientale. Here's another one. And here you can see, with this contrast, how high these peaks are and how deep the actual crater is, because I believe that this is the reason, this impact is the reason why the moon is always facing us. I'm sure you know that we never see the far side of the moon because the face of the man on the moon is always facing the earth, which is a very unusual thing. So the moon does not rotate in relationship to the earth, although it does rotate in relationship to the sun. And so here, it's an excellent example of a well illuminated photograph and how much information it can render, in that the blackest of the black is the deepest part of the moon, the regions where no sunlight is reaching. The brightest parts of the photograph are the highest parts of the moon, which are catching much more sunlight. And then the sides of the crater are also reflecting light into the crater, so that some of the light is spilling in and you can see some of the details. For example, this is very, very deep into the moon. And it's fascinating because, as I was saying, the reason that the moon does not spin relative to the earth is that it's eccentric. There are concentrations of mass inside the center of the moon, 3 gigantic ones specifically, that are off center. And because it doesn't have a core like Earth has a nickel iron core, and it's centered. And so the Earth spins in a centered way, although it's tilted off its axis about 23.5 degrees, because the gravitational, and if you think of loaded dice and how they work, 2 lumps, 2 metal ball bearings are on one side of the die, so that when you cast it, it tends to land on a particular side, you know? So cheaters do that. They use loaded dice. Well, the moon is not cheating. It just actually got walloped by a tremendous asteroid that plunged into the interior and knocked its center off kilter. You might say that it might have been centered at one time and spun perhaps counterclockwise to the Earth. But when this event happened, it was so devastating that the asteroid plunged in and pushed the center to the other side, splitting the center into 3 mascons. And that's the theory I have as to why the mascons are lumpy on one side of the moon. Again, we have, this is a very nice Google Earth photograph of the moon. And again, the far side. Now here you can see what I was talking. You're seeing this is the area of, you can see how much punishment the moon has taken on the far side. And these craters are all either gigantic meteors or asteroids that would have struck the Earth had the moon not been there as a shield. Again, another photograph. Mare Smithy, the north pole of the moon, and again that peppered area. And now we're back around. We've come around again to the Mare Crisium and the Sea of Tranquility and the area where the Apollo landed. Again, we're on the far side of the moon. And now we come to the real story. Over the years of studying the moon, I noticed that it looked flat. When they call it mares, you know, we look at photographs, black and white photographs of the moon, and it makes you think that the mares are basically like flat parking lots. When I discovered this picture, I started to see and I started to realize that in this very high contrast black and white photograph, I was seeing depth that I had never seen before. I recognized this ray not as a ray, but as a ridge. And I'm going to explain to you a little later how I believe it was formed. So this is the Sea of Serenity, and this is the Sea of Tranquility. Over here we have the Ocean of Storms. Over here we have the crater Plato, remember? Crater Plato, perfectly circular. Vast area over here. Here we have Copernicus, a very large, I think it's the largest impact crater on our side of the moon, and then Kepler over there. The Apollo 14 astronauts landed in this region here, called Fra Mauro. And we're going to go there a little bit later and see what Edgar Mitchell found on that side. Now I want you to look
Robert, I think your connection is a little weak
closely.
because you're fading in and out
see
on us.
over here, this greenish area, and here the gray area. Now you know that the bright areas are, I say that you're learning to see depth by learning to recognize black within the black and to discern that things that are very bright are high regions, highland regions, and things that are very dark are very deep. So I think the next one is, okay, here on the far side of the moon to the northwest of the Mare Orientale, I found the bridge. In 2010, I was studying the highest resolution photographs ever taken of the moon, taken by the US Navy with the Clementine satellite. And I found this arch bridge. It looks like it's modular. Each section, it looks like a section, like Legos. And you can see the sunlight passing beneath it, and you can see that it's made out of a material. Actually, it's a different color. This looks reddish because one of the techniques that I use to enhance a photograph is swapping red for blue or blue for red. I also use gamma and equalization. So I presented this photograph on George Norrie's Coast to Coast AM, along with other shows that I've done about Mars, including what I call facetiously Martian Junkyard in a Dingo Gap. And we'll be going to Mars a little bit later in the program. Let me go on. Okay. Here's something that you've never seen before. I call this the crystal forest. And it looks, for all intents and purposes, to me, quite architectural. I don't see how this thing could have grown on the moon. And there are some very unusual videos that purport to show structures similar to these taken from the ground, sort of secret Apollo videos that have not been verified, but were broadcasting on Spanish television. So I call this the Crystal Forest. And now we come to the real colors of the moons, my friends. I discovered this photograph in June of 2018. I was going through an astronomy magazine from Poland, of all places. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, this is the first true color photograph of the moon ever published. So I downloaded the photograph, and then I was struck by the file name. The file name of this photograph is United States Trump Enhancement. President Donald Trump had this photograph released. And now I'm going to show you the true colors of the moon. And I'm going to give you a tour of a half moon and explain to you how this ridge was formed. Here is the Mare Crisium. Here are the highlands near where Apollo 17 landed. This is the region where Apollo 11 landed. This is the Sea of Tranquility. And here again, we have the Sea of Serenity. Now let's look closely. As I said to you, things that are bright are generally highlands. Things that are dark are usually depths, profundities. And I tell you folks, if I ever went to the moon and I could stand in one place, it would be right here on this plateau. To look across at this, because looking from here at the Sea of Serenity, you would see that this is a high ridge, a mound, while this one is a cavernous depth, incredibly deep. Just imagine yourself standing here. Look at the height of this precipice. Look at the sheer nature of the cliff. So what happened? Well, obviously, something happened. What happened is something struck the moon here and plunged into it to create these depths, similar to the explanation I gave you about the Mare Orientale. So what happened to the stuff that got blown out? I say the stuff that got blown out of this landed over here and covered that mare and created this ridge. So it's a slowly ascending slope that comes here and then it descends here. And when you really get down to it, there appears to be a veil of some material over these areas, almost as if you could journey through here, arrive here, and enter through these sides. So leave flatland, all right? Let's get out of flatland. Your eyes have been trained to see things flatly. Look at these things, these areas as slopes that are rising up to a ridge, descending, and look at the color of the material. Notice the color of the material is very different. It's very different than the color here. And that is because, as you see this area here, the color of the material is golden tan color. This is dark, almost like basalt. So this color here, I believe, is what was on the surface here, and then was ejected and landed and coated this area, leaving layers and veils of it. So friends, I present to you the true colors of the moon. There's another very interesting phenomenon here, which is this blue haze that surrounds the entire moon with a couple of breaks. It's not uniform. There are areas here that have a break like a loose tooth. Let me back up a little bit. I can get there a little more quickly. Here in the southern region, as you can see, when we come in here, look, there's a huge gap, like the breaks in the wall on the southern border. And some people believe that the moon is covered by a glass structure. This is a theory of Richard Hoagland, which he has espoused for many years, saying that there's a very thin layer, a patina of ancient glass structures covering the moon, and that occasionally spacecraft try to land. The most recent one was the Israeli spacecraft that went to the moon and was just miles, from the surface, and it crashed. And Richard's theory is that it hit and entered this area of a glass structure and tumbled, and as a result was lost. There are also these very interesting rays in these areas approaching the far side of the moon. So let's see. Okay, now here we have the same Mare Orientale. And you can see again, now that your eyes have adapted to height and depth, that the Cordilleras, the two mountain ranges that surround it, are extremely high, and the center is extremely deep. I was told that the astronauts were sent to the moon to look for entrances into the interior of the moon. And I thought that was far-fetched until I started to find some of them. I'm going to take you to an area of the moon that I find very interesting, which is over here. And later we'll take a little journey there with the Chinese probe that discovered what I call Hiroshima on the moon. Okay, I think that we can stop sharing there and take a break. And if you have any questions, we can have a little chat.
Okay,
I'm stopping
Robert,
the sharing right now.
All right. Why don't we start with the panel? Okay, Nick, would you like to contribute?
Robert stopped me when he said that there were towers or some construction. I know he's going to go into that later, but
Yes.
that immediately my antennas went up, man. You know, when you said that, okay,
Yes.
wow.
Yes. Well, I'm going to show those anomalies a little bit later on, but yes, there seems to have been. Well, the first ones were discovered by the Russians, and the Russians were pretty upfront, you know, during the 1960s when they were sending up the Luna and the Zond probes. And there is an area of the moon to the west of the Ocean of Storms where a gigantic spire was captured on one of their photographs. And it's also an area where later on something called the shard and the cube was discovered. I'm sure Bruce Cornett knows what I'm talking about, right, Bruce? I think
Bruce, you are muted.
Bruce is muted.
Yes, Robert.
Bruce, do you recall you gave
I'm
me,
here.
Yeah, you recall you gave me those 35 millimeter photographs. One of them was the castle, the other one was the shard, the other one was the cube.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Hoagland was very interested in back in the early 90s.
Yeah. Well, it was you and Mark Whitford who first told me of the towers, and miles high. And as I've said on his show, you know, when I heard that, I thought, he's a nut, you know. But over the years and studying the moon, I realized something. The moon has 1/6 the gravity of the Earth. And that alone means that we could build buildings 6 times higher than we do on Earth simply because the gravity is different. Secondly, there is no weather to speak of on the moon. Any weather is very extremely low level. They say, oh, just a couple of feet off the ground, like a mist that may crawl like a fog over the ground. And the third element is the most copious building material on the moon is glass. So when I worked through it logically, I came to the conclusion, yes, it is quite possible that there are huge towers on the moon that may be 6 times higher or more, depending on the architecture, the building material. Buildings on the moon do not suffer wind or rain or hurricanes or tornadoes. They just stand. And later on, I'm going to show you a beauty. I named it Big Ben on the Moon.
That's very true, Robert.
Yes, it is. It's purely logic. You know, the problem that we have when we hear things like Richard Hoagland's theory of the giant towers on the moon is that we've been conditioned to be reflectively skeptical. And reflective skepticism cheats you of insight. When you are so programmed that your mind is so shut, it's in a box. And that's why the saying says, we have to learn to think outside the box. So I learned to think outside the box, to learn to think again independently and not be a reflexive skeptic.
Yeah,
and that's the problem
Robert.
we have with so many things here today. Yeah.
Right.
Robert,
one of the things I believe is now jumped to the top of the list, if you will. They have discovered water on the moon.
Oh, I know.
A number of probes, and they're now looking for places to land in 2024, 2025 timeframe. And of course, the great interest from a mining perspective is the helium-3, along with there's supposedly other elements that they know are there as well. But the water is key because that would be the colonization, correct?
Yeah.
Do you have any insights as to where the prime place might be?
Let me give credit where credit is due. The people who discovered that there was water on the moon was the University of Tennessee in 2010. They published a monograph that said, water is ubiquitous on the moon. And they came to that conclusion because after 40 years, NASA had finally given up samples of some of the 800 pounds of moon rocks that Edgar Mitchell had collected during the longest moonwalk in human history. Edgar Mitchell walked on the moon for 9 hours, longer than any other astronauts, pushing let's call it a shopping cart. He had this wheelbarrow, and he kept loading it up with rocks and taking them back to Apollo 14 and loading it. So they hoarded that, but they finally gave a huge amount of that to the University of Tennessee, and they found that most of it was made of limestone. And they pointed out that limestone only forms underwater. And so they came up with the word ubiquitous. Why they didn't come up with it, they just used it properly. It means everywhere. There is water everywhere on the moon. Another fact that NASA had been hiding for all those years, but one that was also proven or verified by the Chandra lunar probe or lunar satellite that the government of India put into outer space. So there is water on the moon. And that was one of the excuses for crashing the L-Cross satellite into the Cabeus crater in the southern reaches of the moon near the South Pole. They believe that it is in the region of the South Pole where water has aggregated and has been frozen down there for a very long time. So NASA did a very interesting experiment. They sent an L-Cross satellite orbiting the moon, photographing the moon. But when they were finished, they crashed it. And they separated the craft into 2 sections. One was to photograph the impact of the first crash and then fly through the debris. And there again, they verified that the debris contained water, quite a lot of water. Adrienne had her hand up before. Do you want to ask a question, Adrienne?
Yes, thank you. Would I be wrong to assume that in order for any part of the moon surface to be turned to glass, it would require a certain amount of oxygen due to any kind of heat or molten material?
Well, I think that would be a logical conclusion. It is said that about 52% of the moon is silica. Mm-hmm. Now, some people believe that the moon received a tremendous amount of material from ejecta, from the sun. And as you know, every molecule in our bodies, every atom in our bodies came out of the sun, which led Mitchell and I believe Carl Sagan to say we are made of star stuff. Every atom in our bodies was made in the sun and ejected. So it is possible that the sun has deposited a tremendous amount of material on the moon. The moon is also very rich in other things like metals, titanium. And one of the unique things is that the moon has a lot of an isotope of nitrogen, nitrogen 15. Earthly nitrogen is nitrogen 14. And when they came back from the moon, they analyzed it and they found this rather unusual form of nitrogen, which gives hint that the moon did not originate in our solar system. Nitrogen in our solar system produced by the sun is generally nitrogen 14. So it gave birth to the theory of the collision that the moon and the Earth, the moon is a consequence of a collision between the Earth and a planetoid popularly called Theia. And that Theia came into the solar system or was displaced somewhere, and that it crashed into the Earth. I had the privilege of going to the American Museum of Natural History at the Hayden Planetarium about 10 years ago to see a program called Cosmic Collisions, in which they had taken all the data and fed the data into 3 supercomputers in Los Alamos, and NASA, and in Japan. And they composed a scenario of how the moon was formed. And they depicted the slow approach of Theia coming to strike the Earth. And it said that the impact of Theia was a crushing impact where the planetoid was traveling at 18 kilometers per minute and ground through the Earth, displacing a tremendous amount of earthly material and gouging out the Pacific Basin. That is the popular theory of why the Pacific Ocean is so huge, so vast, and so deep, and that this material was carried out into outer space. And the most shocking thing to me was that they claimed that this material composed of Theia, the debris from the Pacific Basin, and the waters of the Pacific aggregated slowly, not so slowly, they aggregated into a ring around the Earth, and that the collisions of this ring coalesced and basically formed the moon within a month's time. That was mind-boggling to me.
In order for it to coalesce, wouldn't it have to be magnetic, like have a magnetic core like Earth?
Well, I would say that the magnetism arose as a consequence of the cohesion, not the other way around. That as matter aggregated, the mass started to interact on an atomic level, and the fields generated not just magnetism, but electromagnetism. There is a documentary called Thunderbolts of the Gods. And I think those people are really onto something, because their theory is that we live in an electric universe. And there's another theory that the craters on the moon were not all made by impact, but by electric arcing. Look it up. It's a really worthwhile talk by some very, very intelligent physicists who are out of the mainstream because they don't conform to the regular theory of the universe.
Yeah. Robert, I think we have Mindy Gerber has her hand up.
Yes.
Hi,
Hi,
Mindy.
everybody. Hi, guys. I'm sorry I came late to the party, but had some things to do. But hopefully I'll be able to watch the beginning when Joe sends the link. But thank you, Robert. Everything you've been talking about is so interesting. I had heard, I don't know if it's rumor or what. I would say the source was an extremely reliable government insider who told me that we actually store gold on the moon. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Saw gold or store gold?
Store, like
store.
Rather than like in the U.S. Mint, we actually keep it on the moon.
I think that's very far-fetched, to be honest with you. We have enough trouble sending 3 astronauts that weigh 180 pounds to the moon and getting them back. I just don't see sending tons of gold to the moon, and that'd be like, it would be throwing it away. What good would it be doing anybody, unless it's a tax we're paying to the Lunar Governing Authority?
I think I don't know if it's a security thing, that it's extremely secure, or that that there's a lot of alien activity on the dark side of the moon and maybe we're bartering with it. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was saying. The only logical conclusion that I would come to is that it was a tax that Earth is paying, but the cost of lifting gold and sending it to the moon. And why send it to the moon on rockets? Why not just let them come into Fort Knox? And maybe they did. You know, there's a famous UFO incident that occurred on the day that I was conceived, January 7th, 1948. Thomas Mantell was killed. Captain Thomas Mantell was killed chasing a UFO near Godman Field, Kentucky. And Godman Field is not far from Fort Knox. So this UFO was hovering over Fort Knox for quite a long time, over an hour and a half. And then they directed 4 P-51s, Mustangs, World War II fighters, to chase it. One of the fighters was low on fuel, so he returned to Godman Field. The other 3 took off after it. And Captain Mantell climbed up above 20,000 feet and claimed to have seen it. He claimed, I'm catching up with it. It's huge, it's metallic, and then all communication with him was lost. And sadly, he died. His plane disintegrated, and there were some amazing stories about it having been magnetized, radioactive. The tires were vulcanized. I guess that means the heat just turned them into mush or broke up their molecular structure. That was a very, very tragic and frightening event. It was the first death openly attributed to interaction with UFOs. And there were many more. That's why the Air Force stopped chasing UFOs. It stopped scrambling aircraft after UFOs. One of the most famous ones happened around 1956 over Lake Superior, where an F-89, I think it was F-89 Scorpion, was a night fighter, was scrambled because there was a UFO over Lake Michigan. And it was tracked on the scope. The UFO was stationary over Lake Michigan. They vectored the fighter directly to it. The 2 blips merged, and then suddenly one blip, the UFO just took off, and there was no fighter aircraft. And Lieutenant Monclaw, the pilot, was never found. So there were a lot of crashes as a result of engaging UFOs. Okay. Major Filer, he's one of the lucky ones. Major Filer, our friend, who's well known with Newfork, he chased a UFO over England and was ordered to fire rockets at it. He's lucky they didn't take him down, because generally UFOs are as aggressive toward the individual as the individual is toward them. So I think it was a lucky break for Major Filer that he got away with his life. I had the pleasure and the honor of meeting the F-4 pilot in the Iranian case in 1979, around September 16, 1979, a UFO was seen over Tehran or near Tehran and observed for quite a long time. So the Iranian Air Force deployed 2 F-4 Phantom IIs to intercept it. The first one approached it, lost all of its radio, navigation gear. The engines kept running, so he turned around and went back to the base. And in 2008, I went down to Washington to Leslie Kean's National Press Club press conference for her book on UFOs. Pilots and the government officials speak out on UFOs. And General Parvaz Jafari was there. He was the pilot of the F-4. And I went over to him and spoke to him because I'd been studying not only that incident, but also the Belgian Black Triangle. I had received photographs of the Belgian Black Triangle that were very, very dark color photographs. And when I enhanced them, as I showed you some of the things I've done with the moon photos, it appeared that the Black Triangle was being paced by a red UFO. When you saw the regular photograph, the red UFO looked like it might have been a tail light, but it was farther behind the craft. It's called the Petit Rachan UFO photograph. And I published it on UFO Digest and the enhancement. So I went over to him and he had photographs and he put them on the table and he showed me that photograph. And I said, hey, that's my work. I brought that out. I enhanced that photograph to show that that red UFO was not part of the structure of the Black Triangle. And the interesting thing is that witness testimony in the Black Triangle incident in Belgium, it was all over the place. I mean, so many people took photographs of it. I even found one guy or one photograph taken by a man that showed the Black Triangle at high altitude being chased by 2 F-16s, which is in fact what happened. So I mentioned to him, hey, that's my work. I was really happy. And then I told him a story. He told me his story, which was he was vectored to the UFO. He was told to arm his missiles. When he armed his missiles, a white UFO came out of the bigger rainbow-colored UFO, a mothership, came out and was zooming toward him, and he thought it was a missile that had been fired at him. His missiles locked up. His cockpit he felt like it was on fire. His radio stopped functioning. His navigation equipment stopped functioning. And thinking that he was going to be struck by a missile, he veered off and returned to base. That he told me personally. And he told everybody that story. But then I told him that when I was in England around 1998, 99, I purchased a series of books. In England, they have very unique literature, and they have very different books than we do on UFOs. So one was a series called X-Files UFOs. So I picked it up, and it told the story of a British doctor who was living in Iran and had befriended an Iranian. And he and the Iranian took a drive to do a pilgrimage to go to an area called the Erbuz Mountains, E-R-B-U-Z, Erbuz Mountains, just to the north of Tehran, where they went to stay in a cabin in a pilgrimage. There is a burial site there, a shrine to one of the great imams of the Shia religion. And people do pilgrimages to visit his shrine. And the government has set up cabins, just rudimentary cabins, wooden cabins, wooden bunks and a door. So to give shelter to the pilgrims. So they were staying in one of those shelters. They said they heard something in the middle of the night that attracted their attention, something outside. And then suddenly the door flung open and 6 men dressed in black from head to foot, covered with a mask. As a matter of fact, if you'll give me a second, I happen to have a mask like theirs. Yeah, give me a second. I'll just grab it and show it to you.
Okay. Meanwhile, while Robert's getting the the thing. It's almost 3 o'clock, and we will have a full-blown question and answer period at 4 o'clock for about a half hour. If you have any questions, just to remind you, raise your hand or use the chat capability, and I'll queue them up, and we'll make sure that all questions and concerns are answered in a timely manner. I want to thank you all for being here. I think it's Robert is a very interesting person with a lot of information, and now he's got a mask. Okay, back to you, Robert.
Okay, so imagine, folks, you're in a cabin, you're alone with your friend, you're doing a pilgrimage, and 6 guys move into the cabin looking like this. The glasses are facsimiles of the black eyes. They could not see the faces, the nose was covered, but they saw black almond-shaped eyes. And, by the way, this is the way I've lived my life in New York City. I don't wear masks, I wear this, made of cloth. So, imagine, 6 guys move in, not a word was said. Pure telepathy. They said they just looked at us and we knew that we had to go along with them. So they lead them out of the cabin. They walk out of the cabin into the darkness. And he says we could hear our feet walking on the ground, stepping on pebbles and rocks, breaking twigs and sticks. All of a sudden, we felt like we were walking on a Persian rug. Everything was smooth. We were led into a chamber where there was a huge window and we could see outside. Then we saw that we were rising over the land, and they were taken to Greece, Yugoslavia, Paris, London, and then returned the next morning. The next morning, they found themselves asleep on the road. They had parked their car higher up on the mountain, nearer the shack. And when they opened their eyes, their car was 75 feet away from them on the road. They woke up and they thought, oh, that was strange. And then they got into the car and started driving into Tehran. And while they were driving into Tehran, they turned on the radio and they heard the report regarding the UFO that had been stalking Tehran, the one that had been intercepted by General Jafari. He became the chief of staff of the Iranian Air Force, Mr. Jafari. And when I said to him, I told him this story and I said, it happened in the Erebus Mountains. He lit up and he said, you know something? I did not tell this during the lecture, but after I landed the next morning, I got in a helicopter and I flew to the area where he also saw the UFO land. I didn't complete the story. I left it where he hightailed it out. But after that event happened where he thought the missile was shot at him, he saw it return to the mothership, let me call it that, because it was much larger. He saw it descend all the way down to the desert floor. And he said that the lights were resplendent, the lights were shimmering, and it was a rainbow colored light that was so bright it was illuminating the desert floor. So he told me that he got into a helicopter the next morning and flew to that area, and he said, and it was there. It was near a village in the Erebus Mountains. So we have these 2 accounts, one in the book, the British doctor and his friend, and General Jafari, the chief of staff of the Iranian Air Force, who not only chased it in flight, but also went to investigate its landing site later on. I've done a documentary. If you go to my YouTube, I did a documentary about this event. It's very, pardon my modesty, but I think it's very well illustrated with photographs of Phantom 2s and actual photographs taken in Iran of a UFO buzzing the tower of the Iranian airport. also contained in that. You know, Iran is the only country, to my knowledge, that has actually acknowledged UFO reality. And it was done about 4 years ago by President Rouhani, the president of Iran, Mr. Rouhani. He told the story publicly in an interview that when he was a little boy, he was going to school. He was about 8 years old, and he was going to school, and he saw a UFO in the sky. And he was just so mesmerized by it that he just didn't go to school, and he started chasing it. He said that the UFO went and landed in a plaza, and then it rose near a mosque, and then it flew to another mosque and another mosque, and he kept chasing it. And he came clean on UFO reality. So the Iranian government knows that UFOs are real, and it has admitted it to its people, while in the United States and Britain, Canada, Western Europe, they're still in denial. But I've discovered something very interesting. In 1947, Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer wrote a paper called Relationships with Celestial Beings. And it was dealing with the prospect of having to integrate into our world, into our society, a celestial entity. They coined the term extraterrestrial biological entities. And they gave many legalistic arguments of the difficulty it would have in integrating an alien culture and an alien race into our world, legally through United Nations, treaties, etc. But at the end, they gave 4 possible ways of integrating with a celestial race that wanted to settle here. And of the 4, the most important one was the 4th one. And they stated that the most feasible, most easily feasible way of integrating a celestial race or races that wanted to settle on Earth would be to grant them rights and grant them territory, and through a contract with them, an agreement signed with them, to ensure the survival of our culture, that their presence would not be revealed to the world public. And I believe that that is the decision that was made by the deep state in 1947. I believe that that agreement was concluded, and that is the reason we find ourselves now in this quandary. All of us know that UFOs exist. All of us, I think, I speak for Bruce primarily, and Joseph as well, because the reason I'm here is that Joseph told the story of his encounter with 2 UFOs while serving with the United States Coast Guard in the Pacific. And by the way, I published a really good article based on Joe's correspondence with me. We co-wrote an article about his encounters with not just the UFO that overflew his ship on the starboard side, but a USO that slid under his ship while all the men were swimming. I'm sure you all know the story if you've been here. I thought it was marvelous. So I did an illustration and an article. It's on UFO Spotlight. UFO Digest no longer publishes because after the death of Dirk van der Ploeg, I kept it running for 5 years, but we were hacked so many times that we finally got it stable. We archived everything, and you can go there. If you go to ufodigest.com and go to the very top of the page, you'll see an article which is called The Soldiers and Sailors Ufo, detailing my experience of a UFO coming down to practically street level in New York City and rising 15 stories alongside a building vertically, and then changing shape from a sphere into a disc and flying away slowly, waving to me like this. It's a beautiful sight, and the impression I got as the message was to me was happy flying. And it took off and heading in the direction of Teterboro Airport. 2 months later, I found a dash cam video taken on the Verrazano Bridge by a driver that was really booking 50 miles an hour downslope into Staten Island with his dash cam on. And there it went, the same UFO that I saw. Now, the interesting part of this story is, you know, I am a private pilot and instrument ground instructor. I was also a coxswain, and I'm a good navigator. And I know the lay of the land. I know the road of the Verrazano Bridge, its direction, and the UFO crossed it at a right angle. So I said, I can figure out where this thing was coming from and where it was going. So I got my chart and I plotted the course. And that UFO was heading from the Verrazano Bridge directly to the Statue of Liberty. But when I extended the line of it, it was going to Teterboro Airport, or right by it. And if you go on this course right by it, you keep heading north, and where do you get? Tell them, Bruce. That area near Wallkill, Pine Bush.
Yes, you came over there, and I was down on the ground, and I thought I saw your plane flying around.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I did a survey for Bruce. Bruce asked me to take aerial photography of the Wallkill region and Pine Bush. So I got in the airplane at Caldwell Airport, and I flew up there, and I had coordinates and a map, and I did circles and shot video. And actually, a little bit of the video was included in a CBS special that was focusing on Pine Bush and Bruce. Remember that, Bruce? Somebody did a video, and you contacted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I sent them the video, and they used a very small section, a couple of seconds, just to give the folks the view of the terrain.
Robert, I got to jump in here for a second. You and Bruce, I've got a homework assignment for you.
Oh.
There's a buddy of mine that lives up in Pennsylvania, of a northeastern section, and almost on a nightly basis, he has UFO activity in his specific area. And it seems to me that a lot of the direction that these objects are flying in, and he's at everything from triangles to, you know, bright points of light, and so on. But it seems that they head generally in the direction, at least part of the time, towards Wallkill and Pine Bush. So because you guys are the experts in that area, I'm going to put him in touch with you.
Thanks.
Also, I noticed Jesse Peak is here too. I'm not excluding you at all, Jesse. I'll make sure he gets in touch with you as well.
That would be great. That's all. I'm in Northeast.
Northeast, good. Okay.
Well, I believe Bruce's theory that there is a beacon there. The magnetometer studies that he did near the cemetery and the Korean gentleman's farm is scientific data. And Bruce says that there is something buried there deep in the earth. I think he said 50 feet down. Did you say, Bruce? How far down is it?
It's 9 feet below the surface.
How many feet?
9 feet, and it goes down 27 feet. Oh,
I thought, 27 is more what I remember. I didn't know that it was as shallow as 9 feet is not a lot to dig a hole.
No, it's not.
But they were adamantly against it. So, well, anyway, I got a lot more UFO stuff to relate, including my own encounters with UFOs. So if you read that article, it has 7 encounters I have had at that monument since 2007, all of them at my Tai Chi classes, most of them at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday. And one of them was amazing because it happened on January 1st, 2011 at 11 o'clock in the morning. And if anybody's into numerology, you got some homework. Tell me what they're trying to say to me. 11 o'clock in the morning, 1, 11, 11. So they do communicate with us. They definitely communicated with me. Happy flying. So let me go on.
Those are angel.
Yes, I was going to say it's 1:15 now. So if you want to go through the rest of your presentation.
As you can see, this is voluminous. I really prepared you a lot. I think we would need probably 3 sessions to get through it all. But the main thing I wanted to do in the first session was to disabuse you of the illusion that the mares are flat, tar-like parking lots, and that the colors of the moon are really the most beautiful thing to behold. Let me answer another question the skeptics always ask me. Well, if the moon has so many colors, why can't we see them at night? And I say to them, do you know why the sky is blue during the day? The sky is blue during the day because the atmosphere filters out all other wavelengths of light except the blue. So I ask them, tell me, where does the atmosphere go at night? They stay silent. And I say, well, it doesn't go anywhere, does it? At least as far as I'm concerned. I'm still breathing. Well, the moon is, the atmosphere is filtering out everything but the blue rays coming from the moon, which make it look like a silver, gray, bluish color. And so that's my answer. The colors of the moon.
Very good.
The colors of the moon are those colors that I showed you in that beautiful photograph called United States, period, Trump enhancement. God bless President Trump. I'm at odds with some of my friends in the lunar studies and Mars studies community because they were adamantly against President Trump and support Biden. And I say that we've gone back into the Stone Age. Biden and Obama, I should say it the other way, B.O. and Joe Blow, went out to destroy NASA. They dismantled our space program. They left it a wreck, in standstill, disillusioned, disheartened. And in 4 years, President Trump put us back on track to not only go to the moon, but his goal was to get to Mars by the end of his second term. And alas, the big steal has forestalled that. But I do hope that we will get back on track. So I don't have much faith in NASA. I don't have much faith in the current leadership and where the space program is going. It's gone backwards. We're going back to the old golden days, and that's not a compliment. That's Golden, Dan Golden. And then the lackey for Obama that he put in charge of dismantling our space program and giving China the edge to leapfrog us on their way to the moon and Mars. So enough politics. Let me go back to the moon one more time. I'm probably going to go back 2 more times.
Okay.
Okay, let me share screen once again, please.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sharing screen. Share. And something very shocking. Why did NASA not go back to the moon? There are a lot of stories about it. Okay, first I'm going to show you a photograph of a crater called Yuktamon. This was taken by Lunar Orbiter 4 as soon as it boots up. And it's a crater where, I would say, the northeast region of the moon, that about 37 miles in diameter. Sorry, the computer is being a bit slow right now. While that loads up, I have something in reserve. Okay, I showed you this UFO. Let me just show you it again. This was what Edgar Mitchell saw. All right, dear Edgar Mitchell now, and you're walking on the moon, and you see this rock, and you've been told to take one picture of it, but something attracts your attention. Found that in other photographs. It looks to me to have been a space station. This is called Saddle Rock. And the way this was that I read the NASA mission briefs, the NASA mission reports for the Apollo 14 and several others. I think I gave Bruce, the last time I saw you, I think I gave you a copy of one of those NASA briefing documents. Where has all the flowers gone? Okay, so let's see. All right, let me try this again. I'm going to try to show you the crater Yuktamon. It's having a little trouble cranking up. I've got so much on this computer at the moment for this program that I think the memory is lapsing, but we're getting there. Open with. There are trackways on the moon that first attracted my attention. Long tracks. And these tracks sometimes bridge craters. They travel over craters, straight line tracks. So I started following them. I found a slew of photographs like this one. You know, NASA debunkers will tell you that there's error on the film, you know, a flaw in the film, but photograph after photograph after photograph, trackways I call them, show this ribbon of flat terrain. When you get in close, it's got edges that look in the high resolution photographs. This is a lower resolution photograph. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at this for a couple of seconds and let's see what you see. Okay, sorry about that. Let's see what you see. Okay. As I said, I said 38 miles, 37 kilometers is what I understand this to here. So it's maybe 20 something miles, right? 20 something miles in diameter. And this is crater Yuktamon, and then these other craters are Yuktamon A, B, C, D, etc. Okay, let me go back a little bit and see what we have. That's the trackway, Yuktamon. Oh, what is that? All right, here's another structure. We'll go back to this one, but this is what I wanted to show you. Lying under one of those tracks. Over here. You didn't notice it. I didn't give you enough time, but I have quick eyes and I see things other people can't see. Not only that, I noticed something over here too, on this side. Structure. I see this as a frame, as a bar, and there's something under there too. You see that? And you see this? Well, that attracted my attention. And so I went on to do enhancements, which I'm showing you now, enlargements. And folks, for all intents and purposes, if you ask me what that is, I said, that looks like the head of a snake. Right? Well, these were lower resolution photographs, but I kept searching and searching and looking for years and years. And here's the other side where I showed you, what would you call it? An armature, perhaps? It definitely looks artificial to me. And it looks to me like it's part of this structure here.
Robert, could that structure above be perhaps some type of masking that they were touching the photograph up with to conceal what you're showing underneath?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think so. It casts a shadow, a partial shadow. If you look at the lighting, it's a little darker under here. But it goes on and on and on in photograph after photograph after photograph for miles and miles, and also moves. Now, I said this thing looks like an armature here, but there are other photographs where this thing is up here, like it, as if it can be shifted. It's still a mystery. I'm just sharing it with you because today is open house day. Here's something that was taken by Lunar Orbiter. No one knows where it is, but it was taken by one of the satellites going around the moon. And as you can see, I don't think that's natural.
Nope.
But it's not necessarily something built by humans. You know, sometimes I see structures that strike me as possibly having, well, this looks like a human. This is another photo of the moon that was released about 4 years ago. I grabbed it, and that definitely does not look natural. I enhanced it a bit to bring out the sides. It was very, very dark. I mean, it's so dark you could only see this part of it here. And I was able to bring out details of the sides of the structure. And here's this very unusual, dare I call it an antenna or a beacon in a crater. This is, or it could be an optical illusion. People would say, oh, you know, you're misinterpreting. That's a crater next to another crater, but why is the lighting so different? You know? If we were looking at two craters side by side, the shadowing should be similar, but there's no similarity. And you can see here, it seems like there's a stalk coming up to this sphere. Again, I'm just presenting mysteries that I've uncovered and tried to share with you. And back to that. So now I have shown you the Snakes of Yuktamon. By the way, that segment of serpent that you see there, I measured it, gauging by the diameter of the crater. I estimate that it's 1.25 miles in length, just the section that you see. Now we're trying to get back to the next stage.
Robert, have you seen the book by Ken Johnston?
Yes, I think Ken included that photograph in his book, as a matter of fact, including a crater that looks like a heel.
Yeah.
D-shaped crater. Yes.
Yeah,
I know.
Interesting guy. He was the curator, I believe, of a lot of the Apollo mission photographs before they were touched up or blurred or whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
He had some of those were the
original.
Well,
he was very courageous.
Yeah. Yep. Oh.
Looks like we lost them.
Oh.
Yep, he's
Yeah, you're
not
right.
on anymore.
He's not there. Okay, well, let's see. No dead air. Let's kind of jump in here. Chantel, do you have any feedback on this? I know you're an engineer by training.
Yeah, I've worked on a lot of space missions, going to many different places, including the moon and, the L-Cross mission. And I've always thought, my God, what did we do? Like, it was like bombing the moon, with that satellite. And sometimes when I think about that, I have remorse that I even worked on it. So anyway, I'm very interested in all this because, the implications of things we do out of ignorance. But I'd like to get back to this whole question: why did NASA not go back to the moon? Because to me, all the talk about Mars is completely ridiculous. I think, you have to crawl before you walk, and we have to demonstrate that we can go to the moon back and forth, colonize it, and be able to live on it before even thinking about going to Mars. I think going to Mars is sheer lunacy. Let's demonstrate we can do it on the moon. And then, okay, you want to go to Mars, go to Mars. But at least, you're not just spending a bunch of money for some, pie in the sky, crazy, ego thing that somebody has. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. But I do want to know why we're not going back to the moon, because the whole Mars thing to me is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I've spent my whole life in aerospace.
Right. Well, I think the plan has been they're getting ready to put that next phase of moon exploration. Of course, there's now a new race to the moon between the Chinese, the Russians, the Israelis, and the Indians. There's a lot of people that are doing things there. And I think that what you said is pure common sense. The cost of transporting the materials from Earth to Mars would be so prohibitive unless they come up with new technology for propulsion systems, lift systems, and so on, that what you really have to do, you have to go to the moon first and create a lot of the infrastructure that you're going to need to build to go on to places like Mars or other bodies, at least at this point in time. So I'm in total agreement with you, and I think that they are thinking along those lines. Elon Musk is the only one that's ready to put his spaceship and send it all the way to Mars. My guess is he has something up his sleeve as far as propulsion that he could pull out of his, his magic hat. So that's what I'm guessing.
I still want to make sure that we don't lose the question: why did NASA not go back to the moon?
Exactly. Yep. Jesse, you have something you wanted to share, or?
I just wanted to share with him because with everything that we found with the the craters, the water, the ice crystals on the moon, if people like Corey Good and them are, if anybody believes in the fact that Corey Good's story and others that say that there's bases actually on the moon. So I was just wondering if anybody had any input on that.
Anybody would care to give Jesse some feedback? Okay, Adrian, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, this might cross-reference it a little bit because I've been racking my brain trying to remember what ancient Earth civilization, which one it was that had a story about before the moon was. Do you remember which civilization that was? There's some kind of folklore that they were around even before the moon was in place. Was it the Anunnaki or the Hopi or?
William Belford, I think he's got an answer. I saw a thumbs up. Okay. Go ahead, Bill.
The ancient Sumerian tablets discuss one of the gods, so to speak, or the ancient astronauts was banned for something he did on Earth, where the major people or gods, whatever they were on Earth, banned him to Mars. So, and that was written in the Sumerian tablets. I believe it was Murdoch.
Okay, sounds familiar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Nick, do you have anything you'd like to?
Right. I just wanted to follow what Jesse was thinking just now, Jesse, that Corey Good and Wilcox and that group have said things that are way in advance of what we're talking about. They're talking about we have had vehicles that can easily go to the moon and other major planets well 20, 30, 40 years. And the technology that we think is there is nothing compared to what's really the reality. And I would love to get Robert Morningstar thinking on that.
Right. That's what I wanted to ask him that question.
Yeah. I just wanted to put that in there. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hey, Nick, do me a favor, will you? Will you moderate for a couple of minutes? I'm going to see if I can reach Robert on the cell phone.
You bet. Of course I will. Be honored. Okay. William, please go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking about we haven't been back to the moon in 17 years or so, but we really don't know if NASA or the Air Force or whoever, the government kept sending up astronauts from. We launched from Houston. We launched from different places in the United States.
William, are you saying that they don't tell us everything?
Oh,
is that
right. Of course not.
Oh, boy, that is the understatement of the century.
There's no water around the moon. I mean, they're not telling us the weather. They knew this all along. It's
you got
amazing.
A good point. You really got a good point. Where is the reality? Absolutely good point. Who else? Chantel, do you have
Where would they launch rockets from?
Oh,
if they were going secretly to the moon, where would they launch the rockets? Because they would probably be seen being launched by people in the United States.
Well, that's the thing. I think when they send, like SpaceX sends 60 satellites up at one time, they're doing it every other day. What if one of them happened to just be going to the moon while the rest are just going out to be space junk? You know what I mean?
William, again, go ahead.
I think there's a launch site at Vandenberg. I'm not sure, but I know there's at least 2 others that are facilities that they don't launch. NASA doesn't launch from Air Force properties.
And there's all the
you wouldn't know if it was an Atlas missile or, well, they won't. That's an obsolete thing. But one of the new generation missiles or some kind of a space research project. You would never know.
Who was the man who said from High Tech, a company that said on his deathbed, "We can take ET home," and we've been able to do that for many years? That's a famous quote.
Right.
Ben Rich.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
that kind of rings in my head a lot. Like, why would he say that so close to his death? That it just rings in my ear. Chantel, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I was just going to say, there's so many things we don't know about, and having worked at an extremely high level of government secrecy in aerospace, I can vouch for the fact that yes, indeed, there's a lot of things going on that people don't know, and so it's possible for things to be going on that we can't even. It's easy to sneak stuff in with other stuff. Let's just put it that way. That's all I'm going to say.
I want to suggest, I told this to my group, Disclosure Network New York. I told my group, I said, just do this for the 1 week. Go see ABC, NBC, CBS major news programs, and whatever they say, do the opposite. Go 180 degrees, and just after that week, just see what the reality check is. And they came back after the week and said, oh my God, it's like everything they said, everything that they were aggressive about, reverse it, and you probably have the truth. How interesting is that? And you can apply that, like Robert Morningstar was saying, to a lot of other things, including NASA. Of course, right? I mean, and the thing is, how dare them do that to us? How dare them give us garbage? How dare them do that? I really am angry that that's the way things are. We can't trust the news. We can't trust the reports. We really can't. And it's groups like this about what Joe Foster is doing and other people are doing, where you're getting a reality check of what really is going on. And we want to know, and we have a right to know that. I had to just say that. Sorry. Anybody else want to comment?
I think Sarah has her hand up.
Okay. Oh, hi. Hey, Joe. Okay.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, I just wanted to say to you up, Nick, is that there's tons of testimony of so-called super soldiers. And I think we have to take some of that on board, you know, of having been to the moon and back and Mars and back and all kinds of things going on, trade, etc. I think we have to look at some of it.
Oh, absolutely, Sarah. Sarah, move your camera a little bit now because you have a very nice forehead. There you go. A little more, a little more, a little more.
No,
there you go. Hi. Good to see you, Sarah.
Hi.
Okay.
Anyway, so, you know, I think we need to take that into consideration.
Okay, who hasn't had a chance to participate here? Peter, how about you? Do you have any thoughts? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Okay.
I just find it all very interesting. I definitely believe, that there was other life, in different places. I just wish, we knew more. And I believe that there's a lot of life living among us that's, not all human either. And, I'd like to learn more about that.
Yep. Okay. Okay, Doreen Hain, are you out there? You are muted. Okay.
I'm just listening. Thank you.
Okay. Beth, I know you're out there. Hi, Beth. What do you think? And you are muted as well. Oh, Nick, take over for me. I just got a text. I think it's from Robert.
Will do. Okay, guys, on the subject again. Well, Robert Morningstar is a gold mine. I mean, oh my God. I mean, I could listen to him from now until Monday morning. What a fountain of information. He's iconic. He really is, like a George Fowler III. These guys should get medals. And, my group was going to do this before this craziness of the pandemic, and we are going to do this. I put it out there. We're going to give medals out. We literally awards that nobody's done this for all the people like right. And I want you guys to nominate the people that really deserve recognition for incredible lifelong service to trying to find the truth. These people deserve recognition, and we actually are going to manufacture an actual award to give them. So that's coming up, hopefully when maybe by the fall. We'll see how things go. But anyhow, they need to be recognized even more, much more.
Yeah, it's if I can jump in on this,
sure.
I'm on the board of directors of the Society for Scientific Exploration, and the society was created purposely to provide a dialogue for anomalistic science, things that are just defy typical science as we know it. And we have our Dinsdale Award. Now, the society was put together by a professor at astrophysics at Stanford and the dean of engineering at Princeton, and another very long list of super duper guys who really risked their careers by researching certain things and talking about, really just getting the dialogue started and sharing research without getting tomatoes thrown at you, but having actually proper academic discourse on these things. And it's high time that people that stick their necks out like this get a pat on the back. And, we have, yearly conferences, and now we have monthly meetings by Zoom, which is fantastic because we can deepen the conversation and talk about these, obscure subjects, of which, of course, UFOs and all that falls into. So,
Chantel, would you do me the great favor? Do you have my email?
No, I don't, Nick.
Okay, let me give that to you. If you would give me how to contact that group, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, because it's I can't say enough about it.
No, that's good to know, and I did not know that. I'm going to give you my email. Do you have a way of writing?
Yes, right here.
Oh, okay, here we go. I'll make it easy. Nick, N-I-C-K.
Yep.
N-Y-N-Y.
Okay.
The numeral 1, not O-N-E, but the numeral 1 at gmail.com.
Okay.
And if you give me that material, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You know, we just had a conversation yesterday, and it was about, you know, can machines be conscious? And it was such a deep level discussion, you know, that, I mean, it's like with this group, I mean, look how few people there are. I mean, you know, I mentioned this last time, where is everybody? You know, hello, put your little radar antennas up, you know, don't keep eating all the dross that everybody's feeding you out there. So it's important that we work together to bring all this forward. I mean, this week I watched the KGB UFO series, and I found out about a guy named Victor Ivanovich. Man, that tore the socks off my feet, you know, just like, holy cow. So there's so much information out there, you know, buried in Russia and India and China that we can't even access because of language barriers. And so actually for our SSC meeting, we're having one of our Chinese guys who's going to share stuff from China that, you know, has not been translated out. So we're very excited about, you know, his talk. So getting this dialogue going on these really, all this, you know, all these quote anomalies, which are really kind of normal, you know, it's like UFOs they're out there. Hello. It's not an anomaly.
Right. I was, last week, I got an invitation to talk for 90 minutes live with a UFO program in India.
Oh, yay.
In India. And the woman was incredible. She was knowledgeable. She's had her own experiences, and she was asking me terrific questions, and she invited me back, and I said I'd be honored. And what I'm going to do is, with the people that I know that are, Joe would certainly be one of them, and of course Robert, a lot of others too, on this program. I'm going to give her a list of those people after I say, is it okay if I do that? Because I want those people to have a voice in places like India. It's important, you know, worldwide, there really is a lot of interest, groups like us, and we need to get together because that's part of the answer.
Yeah. Okay, Laura, we haven't heard from you yet. Would you care to participate?
Yeah, sure. I'm wondering, the photos that we've seen from Robert, has he archived those? Are they easily accessible, or are they part of his own private collection?
I believe he has a lot that is out on his website, and probably various other places, or I believe there are YouTube things. We'll get Robert's contact information out to everybody, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to share what he has, because I think he goes along with Chantel, wants to get the word out and, you know, get as many people involved as possible, because it is an important subject, and I think there's a lot of interest in. We're a small group here, but I would say that, you know, I think that we have people that really in tune with what is going on and have that desire to know more, therefore become experts in their own right. Okay, so you have a lot more power than the small numbers might indicate. Okay, let's see, who haven't we heard? Oh, Stan Nazemic. I know you're out there, Stan. There he is. And you are muted. Okay, now you're not.
I just found this all very interesting, and I'm sorry we lost him so early in our conversation, but he had me glued to the TV. Is he coming back at all, do you know?
I don't know. I put 2 phone calls in, and I got his voicemail, so hopefully all he has to do is click the link, and he should show up on my screen. I'll bring him right in as soon as he does, because I know he has a lot more to talk about, so.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if he's being blocked on purpose, you know?
Oh, wow. You know, it's so ironic because he's such an amazing researcher. Technically, he was telling us what he does with the photographs and the videos. He's an expert. So lose him on technical, I mean, it's like crazy. It's nuts. It is absolutely nuts.
It is. Harry Rainbow, we haven't heard from you, Harry. What do you say? Harry, are you out there?
Yeah, no, I'm just having a great time listening and learning from your show. It's fantastic. And again, I'm like everybody else. I'm sorry we lost Robert. But I wanted to hear the other things he said he was going to talk about. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely hold him. I know he was going to talk some more about the moon, and I think we kind of got off on that tangent a little bit here. So we're kind of filling in for him until he can get back on and join us. I think he was also going to be talking about Mars anomalies as well. And of course, Bruce Cornett has some insights into both Mars and moon. And I'm sure to help keep us on track and heading in that direction, I'm sure Bruce could share some of his insights as well. Bruce, would you care to take a minute or two and give him that overview, what you think he's going to be talking about?
Sure. Well, on the Mars stuff or on the moon, lunar stuff?
Well, we've covered a lot on the moon, but I think the one thing that you covered at the last meeting where you were speaking was the overlay, if you will, of the Sedona region of Mars and how it overlays with pine bush.
Right. That the original may be actually here on Earth, and it is goes back, has been dated based on the last ice age to the last interglacial, which ended about 118,000 years ago. And if somebody on Earth was building monuments of the size that you find on Mars, then we had an advanced spacefaring civilization on Earth 200,000 years ago here on Earth. And also Robert didn't get into two areas. I put it in. Joe, can you hear me?
Yes. You're in and out a little bit there, Bruce. I think you may be having the same disease that Robert had. We blame it on Verizon.
Yes, right. But we're,
well,
exactly.
I don't know if anybody
but
knows.
In the question,
if anybody knows the word
in chat,
yeah, Bruce.
I posed a couple subjects in chat.
Oh, okay.
For Robert
Bruce,
to answer.
Bruce, you're breaking up very badly. So why don't you hold those thoughts and see if we can get a better connection, or put it into chat, and I'm going to try to go down and I'll try to relay some of what you're saying to the group. Okay.
It's already in chat, Joe.
Oh, okay, great. Bruce he's done a lot of very good science work on the issues of Mars as well as the moon. I don't know anybody else that's done it the way he has, and I think that it definitely is something that I think deserves a book if you ask me, Bruce. So you're going to have to get hopping.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go through. So let's see. Who haven't we heard from yet? Okay, there's a couple of people that came in by phone. 609 426 0927. If you want to come in and share your thoughts, I think I know who this is, but why don't you give us a shout and identify yourself.
I think that's George Hansen, isn't it?
Oh, is that George? Is that you?
Yes. Okay. I have no comment, but I very much enjoyed the presentation.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, George. Just for everybody's edification, George will be on in June as the featured speaker. So very interesting guy, and I'm glad, George, I'm glad you're on. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, as you see, but we try to keep on trucking, if you will. Okay, I have another phone number here, 570-223-0699. There we go.
Joe, this is Mike out in Pennsylvania, just listening in and trying to learn as much as I can.
Okay,
thanks
Mike.
for all the good work.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. What part of Pennsylvania?
Stroudsburg.
Stroudsburg. Okay.
Right over the Delaware Water Gap.
Okay. Well, you're in UFO Alley there, I believe, and I think Jesse might be able to verify that. So, you see anything interesting?
No, I stay indoors too much. But if I can connect with the gentleman, I'd like to chat with him a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. If you'd like, if you got my notice, my email address is on there. Send me an email, and just send me a little blurb, and I'll make sure he gets your message, and we'll hook you up. How is that?
Will do. Thank you very much.
Okay, Nick Curto's got his hand up. I can't ignore Nick, but he is muted.
Here we go. Yeah, here we go. But Joe, I just wanted to say, I know you do your Zoom meetings once a month, but I think because of what happened with Robert Morningstar, is it possible that in a week or two you could do another Zoom meeting and just continue what Robert's talking about? It's so wonderful and so incredible, and it's a shame that he's going to be cut like half of his presentation.
Yeah, exactly. And I told him, that monthly thing is just so people can plan on that.
Right.
I could do these things every night if the interest was there and the number of people. Okay, Jesse, you're gonna have to be a guest. I run out of guests real easy here. So.
No problem. I come up with something.
Oh, also Robert Spearing, how's he doing with the Pine Bush Museum thing? Have you followed him on that or?
No, I haven't yet. I heard about it, but I was supposed to look into it.
Oh, okay. Well, if you hear anything, tell him we were asking for him and all.
I sure will.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Bill Belfer, would you like to chime in again? Oh, you're muted.
There I am. Yeah, I had a question for Robert. I don't know if anybody could answer it here, but those vertical mountains he was talking about with finger-like projections he was talking about in the early part of his presentation. I thought that was fascinating. I mean, how would they form? He said they were miles high. I mean, how would they possibly form if there weren't any teutonic activity on the moon? Or volcanoes? We never talked about volcanoes on the moon. How would they form? That's what anybody have an idea about that?
Yes, I have an idea.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes, I can.
Am I breaking up still?
No, now you're not. So
okay.
Now you are.
Well, this lunar surface. The lunar surface appears to be, in large areas, to be artificial, manufactured out of geodesic spheres. And I presented evidence online in YouTube for this. This was discovered by Richard Hoagland and his team back in the early 90s. And it's where the lunar surface and penetrated this artificial surface. And where it is eroded or has been eroded by water, apparently, you get these this crystalline-like material that you see in things that Hoagland described as the castle and other structures on the moon that have this very Swiss cheese-like fabric, or almost like something with a lot of holes in it. And I suspect that you're seeing some remnant structure that was once there and is now just artificial.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, Adrian, you have your. Mindy had her hand up first. Then Adrian, you'll be next.
Hi, Joe. My question is for you. I've missed some of the Zoom meetings, and I was wondering if you have an archive of past presentations that we can access.
Mindy, yes, I do. If you go out to my website, it's in my signature block on my email. You'll see there's a website there. I have the archived shows, the Zoom shows that have taken place since probably November. So most of them are out there. One or two I had Unfortunately, Peter Robbins was on, and he showed a video. The problem is I can't show that because there was still, he had some copyright issues that he had to deal with. So his presentation is being held in abeyance until he gets those issues resolved. The other show, there was one other by Robert White. I don't know if you were on for Robert's. He's the one that had the nuclear power plant, Salem nuclear power plant.
Yes, I saw that one. Yes,
you did. Okay, they're out there. Bruce is out there. So go out to my website, www.millenniumoss.com.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Adrian, I think you were next.
Yeah, picking up on the structures on the moon. Somewhere during my readings, I ran across someone who claimed these structures, not necessarily on the moon, but elsewhere, were grown, almost like an organism. And the beings that used them, as they would leave or come back, return to their housing structure, they would say goodbye and hello, because it was actually a sentient being.
Okay. The only thing I have any insights into that on, there's been a number of photographs over the years going back to the Navy's orbital, what was it? Not a Tangerine, but it's like a Clementine. The Clementine mission, they had some anomalous objects that were shown that did not get a lot of airplay, but and also a lot that probably never made it into the public domain. That show structures. I mentioned Ken Johnston before. Ken was a Marine pilot during Vietnam. He worked for NASA, became an astronaut trainer, and his specific area of expertise turned out to be the Grumman's lunar lander, the lunar module. Interestingly, my uncle worked on that lunar module. He was one of the designers of the control system for the lunar lander. So there was a lot of things going on, and a lot of the pictures that Ken Johnston alluded to were taken by the Apollo missions, not just one, but all of them. And they were put into certain archives, and he was an archivist. After he completed his work with Grumman, I guess, or as he was finishing his work with NASA, he acted as the curator for the lunar photographs. And the photographs that he took, that he got, were ones before they were actually modified. Now, they didn't have all these super sophisticated technical capabilities that they have today with Photoshop and so on. So what they actually ended up doing, they ended up smearing or smudging the pictures. So the pictures that he has are very, very specific, and they show some very, very sharp images of multiple domes in certain craters, spires, other objects that looked like a tethered balloon. And I strongly suggest get the book, Ken's Moon. You can get it on Amazon. I don't get anything for it, but I found his pictures absolutely fascinating. Some of which I think Robert's incorporated into his presentation. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and I think it all bears witness that there are things that we have not been privy to, but we are learning about now. Go ahead, Adrian. Another question?
Yeah, I may be so bold as to ask one more question or put it out there to anybody. I was hoping to be able to ask Robert his personal opinion about any kind of civilizations on the moon and Mars, whether they were white hats or black hats, because what I'm seeing right now, it's I don't know a whole lot about the Cosmic Federation or whatever they got going on, but pretty much we are to be left alone to work out our own problems, other than blowing ourselves up. They're not supposed to interfere. But what I'm seeing here on Earth now is complete interference with DNA manipulation. I've met a cyborg, which was really wild. And it had some kind of advanced technology that took me right out by whacking me in the temple with something invisible. I'm not the only one that's happened to. So my wondering, you know, who are our neighbors?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Also, who's driving the politics of the world right now?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say is, yeah, who's in charge? Because this manipulation should not be going on by humans, if that's what I want to call. I'm not going to mention names. I think we know who they are and what it's being administered through. But
well, I think Robert actually answered part of your question because he said back in the 40s, I think 47 precisely, he mentioned that the deep state, I mean, there's been a deep state probably since the beginning of time. Ever since you had politics, there was always, you know, the subterranean variety, if you will. And it sounded to me like the deal with the devil that they made. They said, okay, you know, in order to get certain technologies or help with certain technologies, we demand this in return. We don't want anybody to know we're here. So, you know, and if that deal is still in place, that probably explains as much as you need to have explained about why we don't have more disclosure when you have millions of people that are experiencing the extraterrestrial phenomena, whether it's, you know, first, second, or third kind, fifth kind, or whatever.
In other words, the deep state is not human.
I'm going to say that, first of all, any civilization, whether it's one civilization from extraterrestrial source or 57, like some are saying, you have a wide swath of possibilities as far as, you know, what their motives are, what their desires are, and who is controlling whom. Who provided the Nazis with certain technologies? They were 20 years ahead of us when it came to missile technology. You know, that doesn't just happen overnight. It comes from someplace. And what is the reason that an alien civilization would support a Nazi civilization or a Soviet, a communist situation, or a capitalist situation? They all have their perspectives. They all would have their own desires and plans. Is it going to be in our best interest, or may it be in their best interest?
Well, it seems to me if America is the last man standing, which is going down the tubes pretty quick right now as far as we can see above ground.
Exactly.
The easiest way for any other non-human entity, being the deep state, to take over is to have less humans to deal with. That means our ways have to be put out of the way. Control the people, depopulate the earth, and cyborgs or whatnot can finish off the job.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, now I can digress right here, and I apologize up front for doing this. But if you remember back in the 60s, those of us that were old enough to remember it, there was a massive famine that was taking place in Africa. The encroachment of the Sahara Desert, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were dying. Well, anyway, the US government decided to commission a study. Now, these studies are done by Battelle Corporation, Rand Corporation. They only do studies for the government. They only do research work for the government. Well, this one study that Rand Corporation was asked to do, they were asked to look at population issues and precisely about how do you support the population with all the famine taking place. Well, they came up with a very nice report, and it was a snapshot in time. I think there was 3.5 billion people on the face of the earth, and there were about 180 million Americans at the time. And they looked at the entire picture, and then they applied Malthusian theory. And of course, Malthus said, you know, the key was population grows exponentially, food supplies grow arithmetically. And of course, there's a problem, you know, if you're growing faster than your food supply, that becomes problematic. So anyway, out of that study came a number of different things. In the 70s, we started seeing a proliferation of genetically modified crops. Precisely, corn was the first one. And of course, that whole GMO genre came from that study, basically. And so, you know, it was very popular and it was very good because it was going to alleviate starvation in third world countries, specifically Africa at the time. They were trying to figure out how to alleviate that problem. Well, of course, it's like anything else. You get science. Science can do certain things. They can do a lot. But if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, there are things that are called efficacy and safety. If you're doing development of human medicines, there's quite a protocol that has to be followed that proves the efficacy of the medicine, that it works as specified, but also the safety of it. And over a period of time of 5-7 years or whatever, they look and see if there's no harm being done, then it was brought to market. Well, it's the same thing with the foods and the genetic engineering. They didn't know exactly what the end results were going to be. Consequently, you ended up with large volumes of foods and even cattle, enhancements to livestock, milk production. And that was all done genetically, okay, or with steroids or a mix of that. Well, now all of a sudden they find out that there are impacts throughout the food chain, especially to humans. So now you have the non-genetically modified foods that are being pushed, or health foods, if you will. The same thing with the population issues. That study, that RAND study, had two numbers that I found of great interest. One was the preferred population of the world was 500 million. Well, here we are at 7.5 billion. Whatever you do with 7 billion people, that is kind of an overflow. Also for the United States, the preferred number was 55 million. And here we are pushing 330 or 340 million. So it becomes problematic. They use those studies, especially that RAND study went into the Rio Accords in the 1980s. And they use the same numbers. And those same numbers, if you follow the Georgia Guidestones, it's 500 million there as well. So you talk about depopulation. And if you're listening to the sidebar conversations about vaccines and everything else like that, is there a possibility of the entire population becoming sterile? They're saying that that is happening for whatever reason. The other thing is it something that could be a trigger mechanism down the road to eliminate that population issue? And that is a valid concern, which nobody's really talking about very much. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on because the subject itself can take hours of conversation. So anyway, I'm going to go back. Please, everybody, back to whomever would like to speak. Beth, I'm still going to ask you. I know you're out there. There
Sorry,
she
Joe,
is.
I'm out there. I had stepped away from the computer.
Okay. What do you think, Beth?
Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying, well, I was enjoying the presentation. I'm sorry that something happened. And yeah, I definitely support him coming back and finishing this lecture. Definitely would like to hear that.
And I definitely will ask him back, because I know the other half of his presentation is going to be just as interesting, if not more so.
Yeah, yeah. But touche, I always love your lectures when I'm around and I could come and listen. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, glad you're here, Beth. Oh, by the way, you did get my email with the number of the new folks there and down in Tennessee that are the Mufon.
I did. Yeah. In fact, I was trying to see if they were still going to have an expo this year in Knoxville. It said it was going to have it in 2021, but I haven't seen anything yet. So I don't know. But yeah, looking forward to something going on this year, possibly seeing.
Yeah, just to let everybody know, Beth used to be a local here in New Jersey, and she and her husband moved to a nice area down in Tennessee, looking for that little quieter lifestyle, I guess. So
yeah, well, it's not that quiet where we are, but Tennessee is definitely a much more open state. You know, people are not, I guess, wearing masks everywhere, but there isn't that many cases as definitely there was in New Jersey. And they're definitely much more laid back, and people are much nicer. Love it there. Glad I left Jersey.
Well, it's always good to hear from you, Beth.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Laura, you're out there. Or have I bugged you already?
So you just broke up then. What did you say?
Joe?
Oh, I'm going to say, did I bug you already?
Yes, you did. Yeah, I'm just sitting back and listening to all the information that's coming out and just taking notes madly. So yeah, thanks for all the contribution by everybody.
Okay. All right. Who else do we have? It's now 4:15. We have another 15 minutes before the end. And I promise I will contact Robert and ask him to come back for the second part of his presentation. And I want to hear it as much as you all do as well. So, and even though he's not on right now, I'd like to thank him for being here and doing all that he does. You know, it's greatly appreciated. Just a little sidebar, and he mentioned it previously. Robert was also in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and he mentioned that he was a coxswain and a navigator. And both of us having to do with the Coast Guard, we felt that camaraderie that you might expect, and especially with the shared interest and everything. It's a pleasure knowing him, just like it's a pleasure knowing Nick. Yes. Who's that, Bruce?
Joe, my father was in the Coast Guard. Yes.
Oh.
My father was in the
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard also.
Oh, okay. What was his specialty area?
During World War II.
Okay, he was in the.
I don't recall, but
probably the very, very dangerous time to be in the
patrolling
Coast Guard.
for
submarines.
Right, for the Nazis.
Yep.
Submarines, right.
Well, thanks for his service, Bruce. I appreciate that. Okay, Adrian, I saw you had your hand up again.
Also, Joe.
Yes.
Just on the subject of Coast Guard, did you know Kenneth T. Venuto, Select Admiral?
No, I've known a couple of admirals, but not Venuto. I was in. You have to understand, it'll be 50 years in 2023.
Okay,
that I got out.
Okay. He was on the Bear, Coast Guard got a
Oh, the Bear, the icebreaker. Yeah, sure. I know.
Yeah.
I know the ship well. It's probably one of the oldest ships in the Coast Guard right now. The ship I was on was just decommissioned. Yes. Yes, Bruce.
I just want to let everybody know that I put 2 YouTube links in chat on lunar anomalies on my material that I gathered from when I was working with Hoagland, and Dr. Charles Koss from Australia did 2 magnificent presentations of these data. So you might want to check up on that. It adds to Robert Morningstar's presentation.
Oh, absolutely. Bruce, why don't you send me the link and I'll put it up on my website so they can get to it that way, and also send it out to the mailing list.
They're in chat. The links are on chat.
Oh, they're on chat now. Okay. And again, I kind of apologize. I'm trying to monitor several different things here simultaneously. So I'm probably falling behind on my questions with chat. Let me go through. Nick, why don't you carry on for a minute or two? Let me see what we have on chat, questions or whatever.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Always, Joe does such an amazing job. Everybody can, I'm sure you agree with that. This is terrific. Joe is amazing. He has incredible connections. I've been following the Zoom meetings ever since I knew about them. And every single one of them has been a knockout. Wonderful material. People that I did not know, wasn't aware of, and now I am. And this is, it's just it's a win-win situation all the way. So just hats off to Joe and everybody who helps him produce these meetings. Everybody is more than welcome to come to the meetings that we have. We have 2 meetings, Zoom meetings a month, and that's Disclosure Network New York. And if you go to, you can email me. Oh no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask Joe to put the announcement on so that you can come to them. We have amazing people to do the same thing. They do a talk, and then we have a Q&A. They usually last about 90 minutes. And I'll give Joe the invitation so you guys hopefully can join us, join the group. We're not only in New York now, because it's now on Zoom instead of a face-to-face in the West Village, we're getting people from all over the United States that come in. So what we're going to do, even when we go back to face-to-face meetings, we're still going to continue with a Zoom meeting so that we'll have an outreach also to people not right in the New York area. So we're going to have a meeting face-to-face, and then we're going to have another one. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
So that's the plan for the future. We've had amazing guest speakers also, and we also have roundtable like we're having right now. That's important to have a roundtable, what we call the town meeting, where we just have hey, what's going on, what's on your mind, and sharing that kind of information. And those are other Zoom meetings that we do. So it's a combination of a speaker on some of the meetings or a roundtable town meeting on others. And they're both really important.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Nick has been doing this for 20 years. So he has built quite a following and has an excellent reputation. He's always been a good guy. When I first met him, it was a pleasure being involved with him.
Thank you, Joe. That's kind words. Thank you very much. The people that we've met in the 20 years since we did it, and we started it because we heard that Stephen Greer was going to do his first talk in New York City. And since I have a background of advertising, I thought I want to be on the volunteer committee to get more people to go to his talk. So I found a group of volunteers that were working to spread the word that Dr. Stephen Greer was going to be in New York. So we got together and we filled a huge auditorium on 5th Avenue and 103rd Street with a balcony, and the balcony was even filled. Dr. Greer came on. He's a very dynamic speaker. He did a great job. I think at the end they stood up and applauded him, and he deserved it. And then the volunteers were all saying, we did such a good job, we're so happy. And here we go, we're all saying goodbye. And a woman by the name of Mary Jo Fahey, who was one of the volunteers, and myself said, wait a second, why are we saying goodbye? We should be saying, what's next in New York City? Don't say goodbye. So we had coffee a few times, and we formed something called Disclosure Network New York. The website is dnny.info. dnny.info. We've been going now for 20 years, and our motto right from day one is, quote, connecting the dots to seek truth, unquote. That was the motto, still is.
Yep.
And really proud of the group. It's an incredible group of people and dedicated, smart, and deep researchers. And it's been such an amazing journey personally because I've learned so much.
Yep. Well, thank you, Nick, and keep up the good work. Also, I have a couple of, in the chat here, I have one. This is from Bruce Cornett. Bruce mentioned this briefly before. There are two YouTube videos on lunar anomalies by Dr. Charles Koss, K-O-S. He created these videos based upon Bruce's data and from Kenneth Hoagland. So if you go out to YouTube, you should be able to find those. I will send them out. Bruce is going to send me the links, and I will share them with the group, and I'll also put them up on a page on my website. Okay, we also have, is it possible for others to join the group? Absolutely. Just send me your contact information, your email, specifically your email and your phone number. I'll put it into my contact list and make sure you get all the invitations and all of the notices that we put out. Okay, we've talked about, okay. There was one I know Jesse had a question. I think this is it. Question for the end. So with everything known about the moon having structures, water,
yeah, I asked this one earlier.
Yeah. Okay, did you get the answer that you were looking for?
Yeah, we
Of course,
discussed
Robert's
it.
not on right now, so.
Yeah, it was more for Robert, but we discussed it as a group.
Oh, okay. All right. Anything else? Robert said you were born on the same day. Right? Anything else from the folks that are still on here? It's we have about 2 minutes to go, so.
I do want to let everybody know, upcoming in May from the 21st and 22nd, they are having free field investigator training right here in PA, and it will be from 1 to 4 o'clock. And they're going to have 3 different speakers, and it's all has to do with field investigating training. So if you are a field investigator, it's absolutely free.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is the Philadelphia Mufon annual conference. It's a great conference. I go there every year. I will stop by and see you. I'm not a field investigator, but I will stop by and say hi.
Right.
Okay. And I suggest, give the dates again there, Jesse, if you will.
Yeah, it's May 21st and May 22nd. Okay. So on the 21st will be the field investigator. The 21st will be the field investigator training from 1 to 4 o'clock. And then on the 22nd, the next day, they're having a free planetarium.
Well, we're just finishing up the Q&A, but I wanted to do this anyway. The group is all asking to ask you back again so that you can discuss the last half of your presentation, or have a full presentation and continue on from there. So
sounds like he got a hold of our speaker and is telling him
because you're the one
that he needs to come back.
I blame all this technical nonsense on the bossa nova. I blame the bossa nova. I do.
Boy, no, the segment ended. Wow. Everybody.
Okay, so I got.
Hold on, I'm going to ask him where we actually ended up, because I was offline there trying to get in touch with you. Hold on. Okay, Robert's asked, what was the last thing that we saw on his presentation before he dropped?
Well, he was going to talk about the why NASA doesn't go back to the moon.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chantel. Okay,
where my notes stopped.
Excellent. I'm glad you took those notes. Thank you. Okay, yeah, Robert. It was right after you said you were going to talk about why we haven't been back to the moon, why NASA has not been back to the moon. So from that point forward, there was nothing. Yes, we saw the snakes. We saw the band on the picture of the Mare, and the objects below the band, both on the top as well as the bottom. Okay. Okay, Robert, let me cut the thing loose here. Okay, I'll keep you on the line and we can talk. Okay, hold on. Well, it's finishing up now. It's 4:30. So, okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. I will say that. All right, Robert was willing to get back on, but I think he has agreed to come back for another session. So why don't we do that? He said thank you for being there, and that and I'm going to speak for him. He hopes to see you at the next one that will be uninterrupted. Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to put this one up. This will be uploaded to the website, so you can review it. You can take, Chantel, thank you for taking notes on this. Matter of fact, if you want to share the notes, that helps as well. I was a project manager, so I appreciate notes. Okay, and thank everybody else. Thank you all for being here. Nick, Bruce, thanks for being my panelist. Chantel, thanks for your feedback. Stanley, good seeing you. Everybody else, Harry, Beth, Adrian, Bill, okay. We'll see you at the next one. I will send out. We may have something before the next month. Maybe we can do this during the week or on a Sunday or something like that. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Have a good one, guys. See you next time.
Okay.
Be safe. Be well.
You too.
Sounds good,
All of
Joe.
you. Okay. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.